As one of the key parts and aims that we're trying to achieve with the public program within the Diriyah Biennale is to actually encourage conversations with different parties of our cultural ecosystem that exists locally. And it is with great pleasure that today we instigate and kick off our first collaboration with Misk Art Institute, who is one of our key content partners for the Diriyah Contemporary Art Biennale. And we'll be putting together this talk with Myrna, عياد and Khazindar, the title of which is The Importance of Art Publications in the Arab Art World, which will be conducted in English. So if anybody would prefer to listen in Arabic, please feel free to ask for some headphones. There's simultaneous translation. هذا الحوار حيكون بالعربي. لو بتفضلوا تسمعوا الحوار بالعربي في مترجمين فيكم تطلبوا سماعات. Myrna Ayad is a Dubai-based cultural strategist, art advisor, and independent arts writer with a focus on visual art and culture from the Middle East. Art historian Myrna Khazindar is an expert on Arab visual arts in the modern and contemporary period, and is formerly Director General of the Institut du Monde Arabe, to which she was devoted for more than 20 years, and is the curator of a large number of very important exhibitions. Myrna Khazindar is the author of Visions from Abroad, Historical and Contemporary Representations of Arabia, that was published by Skira in 2019. And let's welcome them to the stage. Thank you.
Wow. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Myrna, and she's Myrna. You know, I feel like I'm surrounded by friends. I know most of you. I've heard of most of you. And Myrna is a friend and a mentor, and I've had the pleasure of working with her on a lot of different projects. So it's lovely to see you again and to be in Riyadh. And congratulations, all of you. I wanted to begin the conversation by talking about Myrna's childhood. She will definitely tell you more about it than I will. But from the many conversations that we'd had, Myrna had told me that she grew up in a home filled with books. And your late father was a great writer. And we both agree that childhood, as Dr. Amar Bahbahani was saying earlier, has a major impact on us as adults. So can you tell us a little bit about that home?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Myrna, for the introduction. Very nice introduction. Thank you all for your presence. Yes, I did indeed grow up in a house full of books. It started with my grandfather. My grandfather was the first one in Saudi Arabia in the 40s, maybe, to open bookstores in Saudi Arabia. So we had bookstores in different cities in Saudi Arabia where they used to sell not only international foreign books, but also international press. My father, as you said, he was a writer, and I always remember our house, all the walls, they had shelves and they had libraries, except the walls that had paintings or windows. And then, you know, my father, he put this passion for reading in me, and we used to actually, he would read a book and give it to me to read, and then afterwards we'll exchange on the book, or vice versa. I remember when I would come sometimes to Jeddah for Christmas or for Easter, for vacation. Anyways, I would always have books with me, and he would always take the books from me before leaving back. When my father passed away, he had an enormous library in the apartment in Paris and also in the house in Jeddah. And the books were, my sister and I, we decided to donate all his library to the King Abdulaziz Public Library in Riyadh, to the National Library in Paris, and also to the Library of Oriental Studies in Paris.
How many books?
By the thousands. I mean, even under the staircase, every wall had books. And when I say books, it's like, you know, bookshelves that were from ceiling to the floor.
My God. Did you keep any? I'm sure you did.
I did, yeah. I have a shelf in my own library where I had the books that my father read and that he underlined and he wrote in. So these ones I kept because it had his handwriting, the lines he highlighted and stuff. So I did, yes, of course.
You know, Myrna, the world of books is so big because I'm listening to you and you know, it's one thing to be surrounded by books, but it's another thing to want to read. And when you want to read, you want to know. How do you think he instilled that in you, the want to know?
I think it was the conversations we used to have together about the books we would read or about the authors we would read. Like I also know, like for example, if I would buy a book that he doesn't have or he didn't hear of, I would tell him about it, and we would like lend each other books. So it was like an ongoing conversation between us. What he read, what I read.
Okay. And then fast forward, not so much, to the Institut du Monde Arabe, for which you served 28 years of your life.
Right.
I remember when I first started working in the art world and just hearing about Myrna Khazindar, it was it's a big thing that you were a woman and that you were Saudi and you were leading this influential organization. But then over the years, you and I had talked so many times about a lot of challenges that you faced when you wanted to put on a show, when you wanted to acquire a work, you had no reference. And at some point, you remember, our only reference were auction catalogs for a short time, Yani. Can you tell us about that and some of the sort of walls you faced?
Yes, so the Institut du Monde Arabe, I mean the project, the institution itself started and was opened in 1986. At that time, there was no other institution in, not only in Europe, but in the Arab world, where they had a pan-Arab contemporary art collection. You would have, for example, the Museum of Modern Art or Contemporary Art in Cairo or in Lebanon or wherever, or in Morocco, but it was national collections with either Moroccan artists or Egyptian or Syrian, etc. So we, from the beginning and before the opening, we created and we acquired artworks by artists living in the diaspora, but also living in the Arab world. Many of these artists, of course, most of them, they didn't even have artworks in public collections, and we would travel to the country, to Cairo, buy a painting. At that time, I remember one artist, he told us that the amount you gave me to buy the painting, I bought a land with it to build a house. But anyways, so this is how we started. Now, at that time, of course, there was no books or catalogs on Arab artists. So we did a very huge and important work of documentation, which was what? Which was sitting with the artists, interviewing them, filming them, sending like crews to film them in their studios, send also photographers to photograph the paintings they had in their studios. So little by little, we created an important documentation. But before we had this documentation, we had exhibitions, we had temporary exhibitions, collective exhibitions, solo exhibitions, and every time we would do an exhibition, for us it was a point of honor to have a catalog, even if this meant financially a sacrifice, because the Institut du Monde Arabe, the way it is, we never had big budgets, and we had to ask for sponsorship, etc. And I mean, the problem also we had always is that the catalogs we wanted to have them in Arabic, but that was also costly. We couldn't have them in Arabic, so we'd have them only in one language. Anyways, so these catalogs, monographs, collective catalogs of exhibitions and stuff like this, little by little, they became a source for the contemporary art library. And until today, you have authors, you read books, and you have in the bibliography reference to some catalogs that were published on, I don't know, late Farid Belkahia or late Adam Hanin or Shafi Aboud, etc., by the Institut du Monde Arabe. Of course, also the other challenge is that artists themselves, they don't document their work. So I remember every time I would do a catalog and an exhibition, I would stay for hours, work days and days and days with the artists. Because let's say, for example, you would select a number of paintings. I had to sit with the artist. What year was it painted? The size, the media, etc. So all this was a work that was compiled by the Enseignement d'Arabe through the exhibitions we organized throughout the years.
But then how would you find out about the artists?
So either, we would sit with them for hours, ask him about his, childhood, his studio, the paintings, when you did do this painting, what artist did you work with, etc. Or even, this was really in the very beginning, articles. And when I say articles, it's articles in the Arab press. And what kind of articles were they? There was افتتح اليوم, I don't know, معرض الفنان الكبير, whatever, آدم حنين في قاعة, I don't know what. These were the kind of articles that allowed us to say solo exhibition of Adam Hinain in this place in this year. That's about it.
But then how would you find out about other Arab artists in those days?
So the collection, when we started working on the collection, on the acquisitions and stuff like this, we created a committee, a sort of a steering committee. And this steering committee consisted of different artists from the Arab world, but art critics also, museum curators and stuff like this. So, someone from, Iraq would tell us, but you have to acquire a painting by late Jawad Salim, for example. Us with artists and exhibitions and stuff like this also. So we acquired a great knowledge.
I cannot imagine what you must have paid for Jawad Salim before the boom.
Yeah, but that was very early also. We bought it very early. Yeah, lots of artists, we bought them very early.
Lucky.
Yeah, I know.
I would say things started to change.
In the 90s?
Maybe. I'm going to talk about the Gulf.
Okay.
Things started to change, in this part of the world, I would say in the mid-2000s. That's when things started. Well, I remember the first Christie's Dubai auction was in May 2006. And then we had Art Dubai in 2007, Art Paris Abu Dhabi, as it was then called, in 2007 also, and then more galleries. And then the Sharjah Art Foundation. So things started to boom. And you remember, it was crazy.
It was, yeah.
But then things boomed, and lucky for us, things boomed in Europe because of the Arab pockets or the Middle Eastern pockets there.
And the diaspora living there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But still, no publications. We had a handful, literally a handful, and there was nothing really substantial. And to date, there is no degree anywhere in the world for modern or contemporary art from the Middle East. What I remember the most is how difficult it was to convince a patron to fund a publication. And we still have that problem today.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your observations of that time? You were also VP of Al Mansouriya Foundation.
Right.
And you oversaw the big Adam Hinain book, as well as some. Can you tell us about those?
So, as you said, I was a VP of the Mansouriya Foundation for Art and Creativity. And one of the main missions of Al Mansouriya was also publications, publishing books on Saudi artists. The first artist they published was Adam Hinain. And afterwards they did different publications for Dia Aziz Dia, can remember who, Abdullah Hammas, different artists. The book, the monograph on Adam Hinain, I would say that it was the first important monograph on an Arab artist. And it was very important. Why also? Not because of its quality and not because also we had two different books, one in Arabic and one in English, but it was the first book to be printed by an international publisher.
صح, Skira.
Skira, right. Because until now, some artists, they would self-publish their books. You would have, for example, Diriyah, who would self-publish a book on his work, or others. But these books were self-published, so there was no international distribution. With Adam Hanin, the book was published by Skira, and it was available in bookstores in New York, Paris, Italy, etc. Also, it was a very important publication in the sense that Mansouriya invested in the publication. They sent a photographer, a specialized photographer in photographing sculptures to Cairo. He stayed like 3 weeks photographing all the sculptures of Adam Hanin, by Adam Hanin, that were never photographed before. Because once again, artists, they don't have either the patience or the time or the means while they are working and before they sell their artworks to document them. Document them by photographing them, or by having an inventory where they list all the artworks, their sizes, etc. They never do. So this is why this work was very important. It was a very long-term work. It was at least 1 year. We had someone also specifically in Egypt going to Adam Hanin's house every day, taking the measurements of the different artworks, the media, etc.
It's one thing to do a book. It's another thing, as Basma knows, to find writers. That's another challenge, because writing is something, but art writing, it's something else. And I remember that I struggled when we did the Contemporary Kingdom book, for which you wrote. It's amazing how things come together. One of the writers for that book is Widad, who works at Misk Art Institute as well. But then Contemporary Kingdom, which is this month 8 years old, I remember that was a monster of a book.
It was.
And it was the first to document the Saudi art scene. I had, a blast working on it. And you wrote for us, because it would be impossible to do a book on Saudi art without your voice in it. What did you? I mean, I'm not looking for compliments, but if you want to give me one, fine. What did you think of the book? I don't know. What did you think of it? I mean, if I were to do it again, I would do it differently. But it was good for that time, So much has changed.
It has. The other day, I can't remember why. I wanted to check something in the book. I opened it, and I because I did the foreword, actually. And because in the foreword, I was talking about the magnetism and Ahmed Mater. And since then, Ahmed Mater and others, they did lots. But at that time, Ahmed Mater and the magnetism was something really revolutionary, really new. Contemporary Kingdom is a very important book. As you said, it's the first book to document the Saudi art scene. But it is outdated now. I really hope a patron would decide to do a newer or an updated version of Contemporary Kingdom, because I don't even think the Saudi pavilion in Venice, for example, the Saudi participation in Venice was mentioned in it. It was published before that.
Yes.
And not only the Saudi pavilion, but I mean all the things that since then took place, artists exhibiting abroad, different international exhibitions in which Saudi artists exhibited and stuff like this. These are all not in the book, but it's a very important book, because of course it's the first book of its own. But I think even the concept was very interesting in the sense that you did not have, like, for example, I don't know, say chapters, the 60s, the artists of the 60s, the artists of the 70s. The concept was different, and you had, for example, a section, the patrons, the art collectors, the graphic design also was very good.
Yeah, but Muna, I remember, because you and I mean, and many people in this room, we love modernism in our region. I remember I called Ranim Farsi, who did her master's on Saudi modernists. I called Hamza Serafi. I called you. Because it would be nice in any publication when we talk about the contemporary scene to talk about the modern scene first.
No images.
No information
and no images
whatsoever. So
that
that was a problem, because you have to mention the predecessor, right? Which kind of brings me to something else now, which is the art library. It's an initiative by the Misk Art Institute, where we publish 4 books a year. 4 books a year.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say 6, but okay. 4 books a year on Saudi and Arab artists, with a view of covering the modern and the contemporary. I know that we're having a hard time because, again, information is not there. But I wanted to tell you why I think it's important. You know, when I was at school, we covered history and we got to the chapter on Abd al-Nasser. And I walked away thinking Abd al-Nasser is fantastic. You know, what he's done for Egypt is just phenomenal. What a great leader. He's modernist, progressive thinking. Until I saw the works of Tahiyya Halim and Gazbiya Sirri, who are 2 deceased Egyptian modernists, and I saw the work that they had done on the Aswan Dam. And I read a little blurb, and I came to know that under Abd al-Nasser's rule, the dam was built, but to the demolishment of the Nubians that were living there. So he uprooted them so he can build the dam. Had it not been for art, I would have never known. So our history books tell us one thing, but our visual art tell us another. The same with Joanna Hajituma and Khalil Jrej when they did the Lebanese Rocket Society. Not a single history book will tell you that Lebanon wanted to join the space race. But art told us. This is where I feel there are secrets to our history and our identity that have to be documented. And I'm sure this is one of your motivations when it comes to the art library. Can you tell us how that started for you?
Just to follow on what you said, it's true. The Swiss dam, the Lebanese civil war, but also the Palestinian Nakba, the Palestinian Intifada. When you think of works by artists like Kamal Boulata, late Kamal Boulata, Muna Hattoum, etc., these are also artworks that document us on our history of the 20th century, sacrifices, wars, resistance, etc. So how did I come about the art library? As you said in the beginning, for many years, I was in the Institut Mondarab in charge of the contemporary and modern art section. And systematically, as I said, we had catalogs with every exhibition. When I say with every exhibition, we had like 4 to 5 exhibitions per year. So we sort of created a library with monographs on Arab artists. When I came to Saudi Arabia, when I moved here in 2014, after I finished writing my book, I said we have to do something about documenting the Saudi art scene. As you said, you want to write an article, you don't find images, etc. So I sent a proposal to Misk Art Library about the art library, the importance of the art library, explaining that today we have lots of artists everywhere in Saudi Arabia, abroad, internationally. We don't know their artworks. They don't exhibit in the artwork, in the Arab world, and this is part of our history, and they have to be documented. And the important thing for me was to have these books distributed internationally, and that's why we wanted to do it with an international publisher. The other important thing for me also is to have a democratic collection. When I say democratic, it is in the sense that, okay, maybe someone who is a very confirmed artist, he can afford or he has the means to publish a book of 300 pages, while another, he's also as talented, but he cannot, I don't know, afford or whatever to publish a book of 300 pages. So the idea was to have a collection, same pages, same layout for all artists. And of course, the idea also was always to pair a Saudi artist with an Arab artist.
Why should we know? Why should we know about our artists? Why should the world know?
Because you said, one, it's our history, because artists, they're witnesses of their time, be it political, societal, etc. Why should we know about our artists? Because today we live in a global world. Our artists are exhibited everywhere. You do an exhibition is a temporary, punctual event. After the exhibition, everything is forgotten. If you don't have a book or a catalog that documents the work, the artist will not be known. A catalog or a book, it's like what the museum does. A museum exhibits permanently the works of an artist. The book, it's also reproduced, featured permanently. So it is important. Also, it's a tool that travels. You can take with you. You know what I mean? You have a catalog. You can offer it to someone. He is in the United States, say, for example, and it will allow him to know about Ahmed Mater's work, or Mahmoud Noor, or Sarwa Abu Abdullah, or whoever, without traveling to Saudi Arabia or without visiting an exhibition with their work.
Myrna, why did you do your book?
Why did I do my book? My book also, the idea of my book started with a book. How did it start with a book? I love going to second-hand libraries. I go to not libraries, bookstores. I go to second-hand bookstores because this is where I find books that are rare, books that are out of print, etc. So I was in Paris and I went to this second-hand bookstore where I used to go since I was a student. They have an important section on art books. I went, I looked at the art books, I stayed there for a while, and while I was leaving, there was a table, and on it there was a pile of books, and there was a book on the top of the pile. I walked and then I went back. I said, this looks familiar. This image looks familiar. I go, it was an image on the cover, and I open it and I was shocked. It was Riyadh, the Riyadh painted, the Riyadh that I knew while I was high school. The Riyadh that doesn't exist anymore today. The Riyadh with its mud houses, small streets, souks, etc. So what is this book? I look at the cover, it says Saudi Arabia through the eyes of an artist. Who is the artist? An artist, I look in the back, it says self-taught, Malin Basel, a Swedish artist. She lived in Saudi Arabia with her husband in the 70s, 80s, and she saw the society being transformed quickly. So she wanted to document this society. She herself, she was a journalist. But as a woman at that time, she couldn't practice, or she couldn't work as a journalist in Saudi Arabia. So she decided to take the brushes and paint the society that was changing rapidly. So I bought the book, and then I sat afterwards thinking, I said, but I know lots of people in this case. I know lots of photographers, lots of artists who came to Saudi Arabia for different reasons. And they took photographs, they painted Saudi Arabia. I know writers also who came to Saudi Arabia, I don't know, research, PhD, thesis, etc. So this is how I started writing my book. And my book has lots of images, lots of, reference to authors from the 17th century until today, also lots of artists from the 17th century until today. I had difficulty when doing my book, finding images in Saudi Arabia. And some of the images about Saudi Arabia, I don't know, about oil or Saudi Arabia in the 40s and stuff like this, that I would find in Saudi Arabia in archives and libraries, I couldn't use them because they were not documented. You would find a photograph, they don't have the name of the photographer, they don't have the year, the place, etc. So this was very sad, and it also made me understand and know the importance of documenting our visual history and our art scene.
But you talk and you you're a very proud Saudi. It's refreshing, yani, to see someone wanting to set the record straight, wanting to clarify. And books like these are important.
Sure.
It must have taken you forever, because I read the book, and I don't know where you got those images. I mean, I cannot imagine the process. So what was it, wanting to do that book? What was the real motivator?
I mean, it was, for me, it was an educational practice, of course, because I learned lots of things about the country that I didn't know about the country. But it's also, I was proud of what I was discovering. I was proud of these beautiful images. I was also proud of what the writers wrote about Saudi Arabia, even in the old times. Like, I felt like the vision of these artists or writers or artists on Saudi Arabia was much more objective, much more richer than what we sometimes, the way we sometimes judge our society. For example, just to give you an example. So Karsten Niebuhr, he's a very famous explorer, writer who came to Saudi Arabia in the 18th century with 6 scientists with him, but 6 like scientists in different branches. So there was a geographer, there was an archaeologist, a draughtsman, etc., etc. And they came on a mission. They were sent by the king to Saudi Arabia to explore Saudi Arabia. In a way, it was like the expedition that Napoleon sent to Egypt. They came. They went to Cairo first, and then they arrived to Jeddah. And they wrote, "We are very surprised by Jeddah. It's much more modern and cosmopolitan than Cairo. The souk there, the foreigners, etc." Anyways, they stay in Jeddah a couple of months, and then they go to Yanbu, and they were planning to go to Yemen, and from there travel to Bombay through the Indian Ocean. So they had to wait because they had to travel with the monsoon because of the sails and the wind, etc. Little by little, while they were waiting, a couple of them died. They passed away. The first one in Yanbu, the second one, I don't know, in Jizan, the third one in Yemen. Finally, there was no one left except Karsten Niebuhr himself on the boat. And this, so he finished the travel, he went back and he wrote the book. And he starts saying, "Please do not make a mistake. Do not think that my companions, they died in Saudi Arabia because of whatever. They died because we ourselves, we did not behave well. We did not adapt the way we dress, the way we eat to the climate there. So we continued on eating red meat every day, although this is not recommended in such a hot weather. We would also, during the day, work, get excited. It's sunny, it's hot. We will take off our jackets, but in the night it becomes very cold. So this is how we got sick." So when you think of someone in the 18th century, this is the way he sees Saudi Arabia. I mean, I was proud to find such things, and this is why I wanted, to reference these things in my book.
I think the other important thing about us as a region publishing books is us writing them. Mm-hmm. So it's not. We're not relying on somebody from outside the region coming in, observing for 5 minutes, and then giving an impression. I think we have to own the narrative, and we have to share the narrative. So when we did the book on Adam Hanain, for example, with the art library, I had no idea he had charcoal drawings, but it couldn't have been known had it not been someone like you, who knew him intimately, who knew his work, who'd been to his studio, who was his friend. And in selecting that body of work, you're making the selection, but you're also owning the story. Do you agree?
I do agree, and actually, it's Adam Hanain himself. I mean, last time I saw him, it was in 2015. He passed away 2020. 2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
Yeah, May 2020. And last time I saw him in Cairo, I was there for a symposium. And of course, I visited him. It was 2015. It was a symposium at the American University in Cairo on surrealism. I don't know if you remember it or not. But anyways, I went and visited him. I stayed with him in the garden. He showed me his last works and stuff like this. And he told me, Myrna, you know, I have a dream. I have this body of work on charcoal that he showed me one by one. They're not known. They're not published. Please, can we do a book together like the one you did with the Mansouriya, me and you? We can do it together. I will fund it, but I want you to work on it because this body of work is not known. Unfortunately, I mean, I didn't have time afterwards to do it because I was busy with my book and stuff like this. So when he passed away, for me, it was like sort of a testament, you know, something that he asked me for. And Misk Art, they had the kindness and the generosity to start with, to do this book.
So what do you think of the art library so far?
I mean, I'm not going to say anything about
the project.
Partial.
I know you're partial, but seeing it, you know?
I mean, I'm very proud of it, but I'm proud of the team who is working with me on it. You know what I mean?
Team.
This is when you see such youth, when you see such passion, when you see such energy. I say my country is going to go very far away.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah. I know we can't talk about the future ones, but can you tell us broadly what's coming up? Or like the selection. Let's talk about the selection. Like how does the criteria work? You know, how do you decide to pair? I mean, I know all the answers, but we want to share them.
So, I mean, the idea is to the art library covers art from the Arab world from all mediums, be it photography, be it architecture, textile, sculpture, painting, etc. So, prints, etc. So, the books to come will also cover other medias, different nationalities, different generations. How do we pair? We usually pair by points of resemblance. But when I say points of resemblance, it doesn't have to be, I don't know, resemblance in the sense that he does a geometrical abstraction, she does a geometrical abstraction. It is more of a conceptual pairing. Conceptual pairing, it can be, I don't know, the notion of globalization, the notion of texture in art, you know what I mean? This texture can be in the painting, but it can also be in installations. So yeah, this is how we pair. And as I said, because the idea was not to have coffee table books that would be difficult to carry from place to place, but we wanted something with a reasonable number of pages that university students can put in their bag, they can take to the university, or when they travel, I don't know, on the plane, they can also have the book with them, not a coffee table book that's I don't know how many kilos, like the books by Taschen or Asulin and stuff like this. So because it's a small format, relatively small, not a very small format, but a relatively small format, the idea is, especially for confirmed artists who have a big body of work, such as Adam Hanin, for example, what we did is we only reproduced, or we only showed, edited his, published his charcoal work. With other artists, it's going to be the same thing. For example, with late Rafa al-Nasri, we only chose his works that deal with the hurufiyya, the letter. With other artists, it can be, I don't know, a theme in his work, but not all the body of the work, which allows us in the future to have a second book in the same artist if his body of work is very important.
Okay. And the whole selection of like the publisher, how was that process like?
Well, the publisher, we did an RFP.
Okay.
Yeah, we did an RFP. There was a selection, evaluation, the pros and cons of each publisher. And that's how we chose Rizzoli. It was a selection among other publishers.
I think another important point is that you publish in both languages, English and Arabic, which is amazing. And we know that Arabic art speak is a tongue twister. Why are we doing them in Arabic, do you think?
So it can reach a wider audience, of course, because it's our language. We have to, I don't know, use our language as much as possible. Also, another thing, and this is why I think also we studied in English or in French, whatever it is, and the terms, the art terms we studied them in English or in French. In Arabic, many of these terms are new. Like, for example, if you say muqayyim, muqayyim is curator, but there's different words for muqayyim. I can't remember, but I mean, when you say curator, it's understood, but when you say muqayyim, it's someone who assesses, so it's not the same thing. So there are certain terms that are not very common or not very practiced yet in Arabic in the field of art.
I know. I remember having to learn, because I was touring somebody, فن تركيبي
مثلا
is installation art. فن مفاهيمي is conceptual art.
Yes.
And then modern and contemporary and all that. I want to close this unless you have any questions for me.
Same thing, for example, with I mean, when you're talking about sculpture, they tend to automatically say تمثال.
Yeah.
They don't say منحوتة.
صح.
For me, a تمثال is a
person.
a person,
Yeah,
etc.
it's figurative.
Yeah. But for them, they only see it as a تمثال, for example.
So you are basically creating a new vocabulary.
Yes, yeah. What we need to create very badly and desperately is also art critics, because it's something we lack. Arabic art critic is something we lack in the Arab world. In North Africa, in Lebanon, we have less of a difficulty, but in other countries, we don't have really art critics.
That was actually the question that I wanted to close with, is that what you hope for the art library to achieve or to provoke. And I think one of them is to maybe cultivate a generation of critics or writers at least. What else do you hope for the series to do?
Educate, initiate, of course, document. As you said, further the studies on Arabic contemporary art, allowing maybe, hopefully, I don't know, scholars to do theses in contemporary Arab art, modern art, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Myrna.
you,
Thank
everybody. Masa, khair.
One question. Thank you, Myrna and Myrna, for that very insightful talk. I actually wanted to bring up something because I think it's something that's been propagated particularly after the pandemic, and that is a requirement of fast information, okay? Especially in the younger generation. They don't have the patience anymore. It's about acquiring information fast and getting information that I can access quickly, but also share in a manner that is actually non-permanent. Yani, if you actually think about the way that social media has moved towards, the younger generation enjoy very much this idea that anything that they've done isn't something that's propagated into the social media world permanently. Snapchat is very popular in Saudi because it's an instant, it's a moment that nobody can go back and find again. And I find it really interesting that you're trying to come in and do, in some ways, completely the opposite of that. It's about documenting something in a format that a lot of people find, especially again from the younger generation, outdated. Because it's there, if you really think about it, this idea of books, yani, I'm not particularly old, but I will say that there's nothing more delightful than holding a book in your hand and flipping the pages of the book. I refuse to buy a Kindle. It's just not for me. I mean, I need to feel a book in my hands. But the younger generation don't necessarily feel that way. So how do you deal with that when you're yani, I appreciate very much what you're trying to do in the art library, but you have a very big challenge against you. So how do you deal with that?
Who do you want to answer?
Both of you can.
تفضلي. You know, Masa, you just poured salt right into my wound, because this is a problem that I have as a mom of a young girl going on 16, but she's 6. You know, I don't think the art library talks to my daughter, but I have hope that it will. So I think there are steps that we must take. If I'm going to use the example of Noor, I need to capture Noor first visually. So I need to get her to see, which is what I try to do. I think as a next step, hint, hint, we need art books for children before we get, yeah, they got it. And we've talked about this many times. And then we can graduate them onto something like the art library, because it's like this. It's not intimidating. It's nice and sweet. So there are steps we need to take to bring them in. And definitely there is a dearth as far as art education and publication for the sort of adolescent through to the teen thing. And when I talk about publications, I also mean, I don't know, some TikTok, Snapchat, whatever videos about some artists. Someone needs to do it, you know? Someone needs to talk to that audience. How will they know otherwise? They're going to come to the Biennale? I mean, I'll bring her, but will everybody else bring their kids? I don't know. So I think there's maybe Dr. Bahbahani can help us figure out how to communicate effectively and to let them know this is your identity, ultimately. Mona?
I think it's a question of educating, as you said. I mean, I think if you, the child when he's young, if you buy him books, if you read the books for him, if you flip the pages with him, if you, this passion will grow. I mean, it's the same thing also as visiting museums. I mean, adults, I don't know, teenagers, they don't visit museums or exhibitions if they're not also used since their youth to go to exhibitions, be it with their family, with their schools, etc. It becomes part of their life. And I think reading and books and having your own books, shelf of books and stuff like this, and going to museums, it becomes part of your life. So it's educating. I don't think that, I don't know, digital books, internet can ever replace the books. We will always need books. For me, maybe it's because of my generation also, I come from an older generation. For me, books are necessary, and we can never do with internet or with digital books or with research in internet and not have the books itself in our whatever, library, institutions, museums, etc.
Please.
Thank you, Myrna and Myrna. It was an interesting conversation, very insightful. I have two questions. They're somehow related to each other. First question to Myrna. How can we have more institutions like Mr. Art to work on documenting and publishing books about the Arab world, especially Saudi artists or Saudi art scene? My next question. Where are the universities in all of this? Isn't it's their role to be part of publishing and documenting, let's say, art books? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a very important question. So, I mean, we're fortunate to have Misk Art Library, who is publishing these books. But in Saudi Arabia, also, we have other institutions. We have, for example, the Ministry of Culture. The Ministry of Culture has published and is publishing books on art, be it on Arabic calligraphy, contemporary art exhibitions, etc. So and aside from the Ministry of Culture, we have other institutions like, I don't know, RCU, Al-Ula also published books. So we do have institutions. Now, universities, at least universities abroad, they don't really have the financial means to publish books. They publish, of course, I don't know, manuals, publishing art books is quite expensive because, I mean, the artworks are reproduced in 4 colors, even sometimes more, and this is quite costly. So it's not universities, it's actually cultural institutions that publish, and luckily today in Saudi Arabia we have different institutions that are publishing books. We also have the galleries, art galleries like Athar Gallery and other galleries. They are also, they publish catalogs with their temporary exhibitions. There was another question, I think that.
Was there another question? Oh, please. No, I meant, did the lady want me to answer something? Or you got your answer? No. Did you get your answer?
We would love to hear more.
I think I remember you asking, how do we get other organizations to do it?
Especially private sector.
You know, that's the hardest thing. Because you have to change an attitude, which is the hardest thing in the world. How am I going to convince you that you need to defend your heritage? Nothing does it better than a book. There is nothing in the world more powerful than a story. I remember once Sultan al-Qasimi posted, and I took a screenshot. Plato said, storytellers rule the world. And we have to be the guardians of that story. How am I going to tell you who I am if I don't have documentation? You know what I mean? And how are we going to get our kids to? So the private sector, even the public sector, you know what? You just need to keep hammering. And I think, I mean, I'm getting the feeling, I feel it in the UAE, where I live, and I feel it in Saudi. There is a keenness to defend the legacy. You know, and I do feel it very strongly that, you know, we're always attacked by you know, the West, that we're young countries, okay, and that, sorry? We're new to the scene, culture is new to us. You know, I'm a writer, and I've been a writer for a long while. And I remember, you know, getting those, you remember, Muna, when we first started to, you know, export our art, whether it was, I don't know, in London or Paris or Miami, or we went everywhere together. Yeah. There was always like, oh, you know, they're buying culture. It's new to them. They don't have a modernist movement. You know, there was a lot of that, and there still is. But I feel like places like Saudi and places like the UAE are showing you, especially Masalan, the art library is a very political tool. It's telling you, hey, we had a modernist movement. We didn't talk about it, sorry, but we had a modernist movement. So I feel like we're on the right track, but to be honest with you, we need a lot more people to help us. That's, you know, being fair.
And this will also enable us to get rid of these cliches. Like I also remember in the Aston Mondarab in the late 80s, when we started doing our first exhibitions on contemporary art or modern art, the public would come, the French public, and they would be shocked. And in a way, they would be disappointed because they were expecting to see paintings either with an Arabic letter or with calligraphy or with a desert or with a camel.
Or a horse. Or a dune or whatever.
Exactly. So when they come and see, I don't know, a painting by Mahdi Muttashar, I don't know, that's very abstract or other, For them, they wouldn't understand, and they don't accept it. They're confused. You know what I mean? They're seeing something they weren't expecting to see, and they don't want to see, because for them, you know, it's like putting us in a certain category. Our art, our artists, is the Orientalist vision after all. Our art, our artists, we should have harem, we should have, as you said, Arabian horses, desert, etc. So these publications, as Myrna said, they're important because they help correct this misconception about Arab modernism.
You know, when Saudi art, we had a platform in 2009, Edge of Arabia. And the FT and the Guardian, you know, all these papers were covering, and they had a thing for Manal al-Duwayan, Saudi female artist, like it's bizarre. And these same journalists would come, and I remember in my time at Art Dubai, they would say, so what is it like being a woman in the art world? And I would say, well, where I'm from, it's fine. I don't know about where you're from. We don't have that issue. So these issues were, you know, sort of like slapped onto us when they were non-issues. Same with Manal being an artist. Same with, you know, Ahmed creating a sculpture. Like, oof. But we changed a lot of opinions along the way, and we still are. I mean, look at where we are today. Honestly, it's incredible. We have a Biennale, you know, and look, Leke Malla Biennale. It's really impressive. So we just need to keep doing and keep talking and writing. تفضل.
صوتي واضح. اوكي. زياد الفيفي. اذا تسمحوا بس بالعربي. انا دامنا نتكلم عن التوثيق، انا حاب انه اسال عن اللحظه، يعني لحظه تحول الفن والفن التشكيلي في السعوديه الى الحداثه، دخول الحداثه على الفن التشكيلي في السعودية. موضوع الحداثة في السعودية موضوع واضح كثير وشائك كثير. تضحك. موضوع شائك كثير وواضح في كثير من الجوانب. يعني لما نتكلم عن الحداثة في الشعر معروف، يعني تفاصيل واضحة، لكن في الفن التشكيلي على الأقل بالنسبة لي مش واضح. أنا حاب أعرف اللحظة أو الشخص أو الفترة اللي تسببت في تحول الفن التشكيلي في السعودية إلى الحداثة. إذا هذه واضحة أنا مهتم كثير أعرفها. شكرا.
ما يعني ما أعرف كيف أرد عليك، لأنه زي ما أنت قلت الفن التشكيلي غير الأدب، غير الحداثة في الأدب. يعني إحنا مثلا لما نشوف أول الرواد عندنا في المملكة العربية السعودية، سواء كانوا نساء أو فنانين، لما تفكر مثلا في واحدة زي صفية بن زكر، ولا واحدة موصلي، منيرة الموصلي. صفية بن زكر راحت درست في بريطانيا، درست الفن في بريطانيا. صفية بن زكر لما راحت على بريطانيا ودرست في الخمسينات ورجعت، أول لوحاتها كانت عبارة عن على الطريقة الأوروبية اللي تعلمتها في إنجلترا، إيش يسموها، السينري، اللاندسكيبس إلى آخره. لما رجعت هنا المملكة وشافت كمان إنه المجتمع بيتغير بسرعة، بدأت توثق طريقة المجتمع عندنا، سواء العادات، الأعراس، الألعاب، الهندسة، الحنة إلى آخره. فصعب إن الواحد يتكلم في الحداثة في الفن التشكيلي زي ما بيتكلم في الأدب، لأنه يعني لازم نتذكر إنه أكثر الفنانين عندنا اللي بدأوا، سواء كان الرضوي ولا محمد سليم ولا منيرة موصلي، كلهم درسوا بالخارج. لما أقول درسوا بالخارج، درسوا في مدارس فن تشكيلي أجنبية، فتعلموا على الطريقة الأجنبية. لما جم هنا يعني كأنه دراستهم كانت الحداثة، بس رجعوا هنا يعني يبغوا يعكسوا المجتمع اللي هم عايشين فيه. ما أدري واضح؟
لا حقيقة، لأنه هي الفكرة خلينا بالفنان إيش درس؟ إيه. متى تحولت؟ سوري. أعتقد صوتي واضح. يعني متى تحول الحركة الفنية؟ متى ولدت حركة فنية؟ هذه النقطة. أنه يكون في فنان واضح، فنانين واضح، لكن متى صار في حركة فنية ترمز للحداثة في الفن التشكيلي؟ حقبة، مو شرط يوم أو ساعة. يعني هل
السبعينات بالسعودية بالسبعينات. and it was محمد السليم. بس على فكرة بدي أوضح لك شغلة. مثلا فنان مثل محمد السليم، الحكومة السعودية دعمت علمه بإيطاليا، سو كان في هالفكرة يعني واردة، يعني منا يعني الفن مش غريب علينا نحن يعني كمجتمع عربي أبدا. وغيره كمان يعني كان في غير فنانين دعمتهم الحكومة.
دي عزيز دي كمان درس في الخارج، يعني أكثر الفنانين من هذه الحقبة درسوا بالخارج، واللي ما درسوا بالخارج كان في أساتذة جم من العالم العربي درسوهم هنا في معهد التربية الفنية في المملكة. يعني كان في مثلا عراقيين جم من العراق درسوا فنانين سعوديين في اللي هم كانوا بيرسموا في السبعينات والثمانينات. فكان عندك مثلا شو اسمه سعد الكعبي مثلا من العراق، جاي هنا كم سنة درس في الرياض في معهد التربية الفنية، درس في تبوك إلى آخره، وغيره كمان. فكان في اختلاط، يعني سواء هم درسوا بالخارج أو مدرسين جم هنا، كان في اختلاط، كان في مع الخارج.
بس for sure it was the 70s. أنا بتذكر وقت رجع محمد السليم، what did he call it؟ مش سعودي art شيء something يعني بالعربي طبعا. and it was a group you know. شو هو؟ بس بالعربي شو؟ لا something شيء هيك يا أو على فكرة وقت ما أنا كنت أشتغل بآرت دبي عملنا معرض غير تجاري مع مسك آرت انستيتيوت، والمعرض غطى 5 مدن بالعالم العربي: الرياض، كاسابلانكا، القاهرة، بغداد. No, there was one more. 5.
محمد المليحي كان موجود.
I said Casablanca. I said Cairo.
مين؟
Sudan. Was it Sudan?
I see.
It could have been خرطوم. صح معك حق. And المعرض كان مهم ليه؟ لأنه فرجى أنه كان في حركة فنية بالستينات وبالسبعينات بهدول المدن. وأنا يعني ما كنت أعرف هالقد على الرياض، هيك عرفت عن الجروب تبعيته لمحمد السليم. كان في فكر، كان في like a informal manifesto. So I would say for Riyadh it was the 70s. Yeah. جاوبناك؟ Yeah. Okay.
ممكن أبغى بس أعقب على اللي قالوه، معلش أنا هذا اللي شغفي على المرحلة الحقبة هذه. المعهد التربية الفنية كان في الستينات actually، حتى قبل السبعينات، فكان في عام 65، ووقتها كانت الدولة بتدعم دراسة الفنون لدرجة إنه المعهد كان وقتها بيتصرف تصرف المدارس، يعني كان هاي سكول كومبليتلي. انت عندك منهج يعلمك الفنون قد ما بيعلمك الادب العربي، الدين، اي المجالات المنهجيه كان الفنون تاخذ حقها في المنهج زيها زي غيرها. وكانوا الفنانين لما يسافروا برا اللي قالوا عليهم كانوا حتى اللي ما يقدروا يسافروا برا ياخذوا لهم لستات عشان تتأكد الدولة إنه في الخامات والمواد متوفرة لكل من سعى إنه يتخذ هذا كمجال دراسة له أو كمجال مهنة له. وبعد المعهد أظن قعد لين 1990، فاستمر عشان وقتها الاستدامة هو المؤشر لنجاح الشيء. فإنك تقول وقتها في الستينات أبدأ بشيء ويقعد 35 سنة كمعهد، بدأوا وجو في ناس من مختلف أنحاء العالم العربي والسعوديين اللي راحوا درسوا برا على بعثات، كان في استراتيجية إنه ارجعوا ودرسوا في هذا المعهد. الخطة الاستراتيجية للاستدامة حقت العجلة للنمو، خاصة الثقافي اللي بيصير عشان يدعموا الحركة التشكيلية وقتها، عشان كل فنان يحس إنه له الأحقية بأنه يتخذ هذا المسار، كانت جدا عالية. وزي I think في أي مكان ثاني إحنا لا ننسى إنه نحن يعني نشأنا في الثلاثينات أو ولدنا في الثلاثينات، وفي أقل من 40 سنة أنا أسس معهد تربية فنية يتصرف تصرف منهجية مدارس، وأحب يعني فيها تحفيز للفن. يعني أحس إن كنا سابقين زماننا في ذاك الوقت، فكان في دعم لا محدود لهذا المجال. يعني
اسمك زياد، شفت شو مشكلتنا؟ ما سجلنا، ما سجلنا. That's the problem.
لما سويت الكتاب حقي سويت انترفيو مع سعد الكعبي، لأنه سعد الكعبي فنان عراقي مشهور، وكان من ضمن المدرسين مع شاكر حسن السعيد إلى آخره اللي جمع المملكة زي ما قلت على تبوك والرياض وإلى آخره، ودرس لمدة 4 سنوات تقريبا. وسألته على تجربته هنا، وقال لي إنه هو سوى لما كان هنا عمل 3 معارض فنية، 3 معارض فنية. حتى حكى لي إنه واحد من المعارض كان في أوتيل ما أدري أتذكر نسيت إيش اسمه، بس هو كان الوحيد الأوتيل اللي كان موجود في الرياض وقتها. وسوى إيش اسمه؟ اليمامة، شكرا. ومعرض تاني سواه في بيت طيني، وقال إنه قالوا له ما تكتب على البيت من برا إنه معرض، بس اكتب الرجاء رن الجرس، وما يحطوا انه معرض لفلان. سالته قلت له طيب انت لما كنت هناك انت كنت بترسم، انت بتقول سويت معارض، ايش انواع اللوحات اللي كنت تسويها؟ قال لي الصحراء، البيئه اللي اشوفها قدامي، الجمال، يعني كل الاشياء اللي اشوفها. قلت له طيب اعطيني عندك صور لهذه اللوحات؟ وهذا قال لي ما عندي شيء. عندك صور للمعارض؟ هذه دعوه حقت المعارض ولا شيء. فالفنان نفسه هو نفسه ما بيوثق العمل، عمله سواء العمل أو المعارض إلى آخره.
المعارض كانت شخصية وعملهم بد ولا كان في جهات؟
لا، قال لي في واحد من المعارض الملك عبد الله الله يرحمه جاء افتتح المعرض معرضه واقتنى منه أعمال. فإذا كان في معرض اليمامة أظن كان وقتها قال لي وزارة التربية وقتها أعدت المعرض.
جدا مثيرة. في عام 2009 كنت في منطقة القطيف، كان جزء من بحث كنت قاعدة أسويه حوالين المملكة، والصراحة شد انتباهي الفنان علي الصفار، لأنه كان هو من ما شاء الله رواد الفن السعودي، وكان هو من منطقة القطيف. فدخلت على الاستوديو حقه وعنده كمبيوتر جهاز، ووراه في شلفز ومحطوطة ملفات مخطوطة باليد، باين إنها مجلدات يدوية. فكنت قاعدة أسأله عن لوحاته وعن كذا، وسألته إيش اللي موجود هنا. حاطط تدوين أرشيفي لكل فنان من القطيف، مسيرة حياتهم، سيرة ذاتية، صور لأعمالهم، وكل شيء، وبخط يده يجيبهم يكتب رواياتهم ويدونها. يقول إنه لو أنا ما سويتها ما أعرف. الافرت الاجتماعي ده اللي بيسووه عشان طب ما في تدوين فعلا. احنا عندنا لازم ضرورة التدوين شيء لازم يعني نبث هذه المعرفة عشان الاستمرارية اللي نبغاها، وبرضه النولج للأجيال اللي بعدنا وحتى لينا نحن. بس إنه كيف الأفرتس بتصير، يعني في ناس العكس حاسين يعني بس حسيت إنه لازم أشارك هذه القصة، لأنه في ناس حقيقي they dedicate وقتهم. تخيلي إنه هو كل فنانين القطيف عليهم أرشيف عند، يعني معظمهم على وقتها على حسب معرفتي، عند الفنان علي الصفار، عشان بالنسبة له هذا كنز. يقول هذا كنز منطقة القطيف وحرام يضيع، أنا مدونهم كلهم عندي.
طب رنيم، إيش صار بالملفات هذه؟ أحد سوى عليهم سكان، فوتوكوبي؟ في
رنيم سجلتهم كلهم. رنيم
هنت نرجع لك فيها إن شاء الله. أرجع لك فيها إن شاء الله. قلت لي اسمك زياد صح؟ إن شاء الله. لا إن شاء الله يكون متسوي فيها شيء، بس أنا على الأقل من إنها محفوظة وموجودة كذا first step يعني. وفي كثير ترى كمان، يعني عبد الرحمن السليمان يسوي نفس الشيء بالمجلدات. وين
الرضوي،
غير الرضوي، مروان مثلا الولد الرضوي، نجلة السليم بنت محمد السليم، عبد الله حماس. ستيلها لما قلتوا على المعارض، اتذكر برضو في نفس الفترة طلع لي ارشيفات معرض في باريس، وكم كانت اللوحة الواحدة يعني الفلاير. هذه الاشياء كنوز حقيقي، كنوز لنا، ودكتور محمد الرصيص والارشيفات اللي موجودة عندهم. يعني هي شيئين حقيقي، ضرورة التدوين، وترى لازم نبحث، ترى موجود بس احنا ما بندور. صح. يعني ولما نركز اننا ندور ترى نلاقي، يعني في حلقات مفقودة، واحس انه جاء الوقت اللي بتنشبك هذه، بيصير فيها همزات وصل الان، والحمد لله بتنكشف الامور بطريقة صح.
في عندنا سؤال هون.
عربي انجليزي تزمتها. قبل كل شيء تحيه كبيره للبنالي، وتحيه لوجودكم والمجهودات اللي قاموا فيها جميع اللي سبقوا بتدوين الفن. انا عندي سؤال وعندي اقتراح. السؤال الاول يخص استاذه منى. انا لما كنت اقرا في الفنون في البداية قريتها كله بالإنجليزي عن حياة وسيرة الفنانين كلها. طبعا ما كان في شيء زي كده في العربي، هذا اتكلم من 20-25 سنة ما في أي كتاب عن الفنانين العرب. لما نشوف صيغة الكتب بالإنجليزي بيكتبوا عن حياته، عن فنه، وعن تفكيره. منى خزندار لما كتبت عن الفنانين السعوديين أو العرب، إيش من هذه الثلاث النقط هل هم متوازيين في طريقة صياغتها في الكتاب؟ والاقتراح الثاني إنه جاني من إنه مع كلمة للأسف تيك توك وإنستغرام، ممكن يكون في publication صغيرة، ما تجي publication، هي تكون initiate صغيرة، إنه ملخص عن الفنان، لقطة صغيرة بالفيديوز. and if you want to go back and get the book from Misk art or any publication books. هذا another proposal. بس أحب أسمع طريقة صياغة الكتب بالنسبة لك.
طيب هو طبعا الاثنين اساسيين، الكتاب اساسي بس كمان الفيديو اساسي. عشان كده قلت لك معهد العالم العربي مثلا لما بدينا رحله وتاريخ الفن العربي الحديث والمعاصر، مش بس طبعا كتب، بس كمان كنا نرسل مصورين لفنانين مشهورين، سواء كان المرحوم مروان ولا المرحومة شعيبية إلى آخره، يروحوا يسافروا عندهم في بلدهم في المغرب ولا بسوريا ولا إلى آخره، ويصوروهم لمدة كم يوم في الاتيليه تبعهم، يصوروا أعمالهم كيف بيشتغلوا، يسألوهم أسئلة إلى آخره. وهذه الفيديوهات مهمة لأنه فرضا مثلا هتسوي معرض استعادي للمرحوم مروان، هتحط أعماله الموجودة، بس كمان حلو تحط فيديو الفنان هو بيرسم، هو بينتج، هو بيتكلم عن عمله، هو بيتكلم عن الانسبريشنز حقته إلى آخره. فالاثنين مهمين، وأكيد يعني فكرة كويسة أن يكون الاثنين موجودين. بالنسبة للكتب الفنية في العالم العربي وفي الغرب، أكيد أنا معاك كمان. يعني يمكن هذه المشكلة اللي بنعانيها في العالم العربي، إنه ما بيكون في تركيز على تحليل العمل الفني ولا الفنان، لأنه ما عندنا نقاد فنيين كتير زي في الغرب، وما عندنا مجلات فنية أو النقد عن الفن مش مرة تانية افتتح فيه وحضر الافتتاح إلى آخره. لا، أنا أقصد مثلا أحد يتكلم عن المعرض، اللوحات الموجودة فيه، التعليق، يعني بشكل نقدي عن الأعمال الفنية وعن الفنان. ما عندنا في العالم العربي كتير. وزي ما قلت أنت، لما في الغرب بيكتبوا مقالة بيكتبوا طبعا عن حياته، تأثراته، الانسبريشنز حقته، بس كمان عن طريقة عمله، عن طريقة العمل من كل النواحي، سواء كان من التركيب ولا إن كانت من الألوان ولا إن كانت من المواضيع ولا إن كانت من التحولات إلى آخره، أو طبعا كانت من نشأته، تعليمه، مع مين درس، فين درس إلى آخره. سألتني أنا لما أكتب عن فنان يعني أي يعني ما يعني على حسب الفنان طبعا. يعني مثلا لما يكون يعني أنا لما كنت أكتب يعني مثلا إذا فنان عايش بالغربة غير ما يكون فنان عايش في بلده. لما يكون عايش بالغربة بيكون عنده تأثرات مختلفة. طبعا بيكون في موجودة في جذوره اللي من بلده، البيئة ولا المحيط ولا المكان ولا الناس اللي كبر معاهم. بس بيكون كمان بعدين إذا عايش بالغربة أو درس في الغربة بيكون التأثرات الغربية. فبطبيعة الحال بيكون في مادة أكبر وأغنى أتكلم فيها عن مراحل حياته ولا عن تأثراته ولا عن عمله من أن أتكلم عن سيرته أو البيوغرافي حقته.
بس معظم الفنانين اللي دونت عنهم الكتب كتبت عن سيرة حياتهم، حتى الحياة الشخصية أو بعض ملامح من الحياة اليومية اللي أثرت فيهم كفنانين. هذه النقطة كيف ممكن تتغطى بالكتابة عن الفنانين العرب؟
هذا الشيء بيسويه مثلا مسك ارت لايبرري. احنا في مسك ارت لايبرري الكتاب دائما بيكون خلينا نقول الفهرس حقه نفس الفهرس لكل الكتاب. يعني مقدمة، يعني مقالة تحليلية من ناقد أجنبي، مقالة تحليلية طويلة من ناقد عربي، وفي الأخير بتكون السيرة الذاتية. بس ما بتكون سيرة ذاتية 1950 ولد في مكة مدري إيش 1960 تخرج من كلية الفنون. لا، بتكون فقرات بتكون مكتوبة كمقالة. بتكون إنه مثلا معرضه أو مثلا كان ضمن المجموعة الفنية كذا، معرض الأولاني ضم أعمال خلينا نقول زيتية، هذا كان موضوعها إلى آخره. فالبيوغرافي نفسها بتكون عبارة عن تحليل شغله مش بس النقاط المهمة في حياته.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.